Ultimate Invasion opens 2 months in the past at the Blackguard building, where a special squad of mercenaries breach the building's lobby, using their advanced sonic weapons to blow apart the soldiers and security guarding the building. The soldiers shoot back at the villains, whose specialized suits block the bullets with force fields. A rocket launcher activates from the roof and blasts the villains, but it does nothing to them, allowing one of them to get close and lob a black hole grenade at it, obliterating the launcher and most of the lobby with it. One of the men retrieves a keycard from an injured woman, and the others grab one from a man who demands to know what they want. The leader says that they want $1 billion, but is told that this isn't a bank, and he knows as he shoots the man in the face. The men use the keycards to get further into the base, chatting about the supposed $1 billion payday ahead of them and how the leader will get most of it while the other guys only get about 10 million each. The team arrive at level 2 of the facility and they think the money is on the other side of the door, but the leader knows it's not the money, but a man who promised them the money if they freed him. Heading through the last door, they finally come face to face with the Maker, who finds it quite fantastic that they brought what he asked for. He retrieves his helmet and gear from the men as the men ask where the money is. Maker says it's all around them actually, floating in the ether, ready to be plucked out and brought into a more believable fiction. The men don't think he has it, not believing this guy organized all of this while locked up and he somehow couldn't get himself out. Maker retrieves a device from inside his helmet as he explains that his captors were quite benevolent and thought that he needed some care, having him see a rotating team of therapists, and after 37 grueling sessions, Reed managed to break and reprogram them so they would do his bidding out in the world. He orders the men to take off their masks and they do, told that they were each recruited specifically for this job. He gets them to rattle off their names and notes how one isn't the one he recruited. Dominic explains that Keith was killed in a car wreck 2 days before today, so Jackson jumped in at the last minute to take his place. Maker of course knew some unforeseen complications could occur and he planned for that eventuality, but his genetic sequencing were for the 4 soldiers he recruited for a reason. Luckily, this will be a less than 1% anomaly that no one will notice. However, the other Reed might notice, which kind of annoys the Maker. Dominic knows that it was a last minute decision for him to join, and this is the best they could do, as Maker talks about one of the therapists and how he encouraged and challenged Maker in a way he didn't believe was possible, since he made Maker want to be a better man with better goals. Maker activates his device and the soldiers are all violently turned inside out and into goo, reforming into a duplicate of the Maker who will take Reed's place in the jail. Weeks later, Mr. Fantastic and Black Panther survey the destroyed Blackguard facility, with T'Challa wondering why they are there. Reed explains that he couldn't stop thinking about the building exploding, like his mind was trying to solve a puzzle, so he tried to get closer, but he wasn't allowed near the building. However, luckily, T'Challa and his government friends came in and he was allowed to show him the sights. T'Challa laments how much red tape is on this one, and it's quite thick, knowing Reed could have gotten in if he wanted to alone. Reed reveals that he's trying to show restraint, however it's not going so well. T'Challa checks his readouts of the building, finding his contacts say the building was hiding a damage control node, asking Reed what it could be holding. Reed has an idea, heading into the node and finding the Maker is still there. Reed isn't so sure, and upon talking directly to Reed, it falls apart, turning the Maker into a puddle of gore. T'Challa calls Reed the smartest man in the universe, and now there is an evil version of him loose, so this needs to be handled quickly and quietly. Reed isn't so worried about the Maker and where he is, but more worried about what he's doing and why. A week later, the Maker infiltrates the Baxter building, passing the very sleepy Franklin who mistakes him for his father, motioning for the boy to be quiet. Maker heads to Reed's lab, using his computer to find what he needs, as the next day at the necropolis, the Illuminati gather, told by Reed that the Maker covered his tracks well. But they do know he took something from each of them, as he came to Wakanda and stole a shipment of vibranium, went to Arctillan and stole 4 inhuman Terrigen spheres, each with enough power to power a large city for 1,000 years. He then stole a time bridge from Reed that was for some reason inside a Stark storage facility in Long Island, and then he somehow made off with a Krakoan gateway from Krakoa. After all of that though, Maker wasn't done, stealing an immunity lance from the Sanctum Sanctorum and finally some dilution shields from Atlantis, which he killed his way through to get. Reed is unsure what what he is making, but T'Challa thinks they could make assumptions on what he is by what he stole. However, they don't know why he stole the spear and shield too. Iron Man thinks that it's a message to them specifically since he wants them to know, wondering what the villain is waiting for now. Later on in Brooklyn, Miles Morales' room is invaded by the Maker, who makes Miles jump from his bed onto the ceiling. Maker wonders if they have ever met before since the masks and monikers make it very difficult to tell. He tells the defensive Miles that he is like a brother to him, revealing that they are from the same world, wondering if Miles knows all about Earth 1610 and the secret wars that wiped it from reality. Miles questions how he didn't know that, but Maker reveals that he did, just not in the way he knows it now, and finally he is going home, wanting Miles to come with him. Miles thinks that the villain is totally serious, and the Maker thinks that if the roles were reversed, he would have liked the chance to have been asked as well. Miles, however, refuses, given a seemingly blank card by the seemingly annoyed Maker before he disappears in a flash of light. The next day, the Illuminati confront the Maker, who has created his portal device using the different items he stole from them. Maker knows that the heroes can't stop him since they don't know where he's going or what he's going to do. Black Panther assures the villain that they will follow him, but Maker tells him that the bridge controller will purge and randomize after he's gone, and not only that, he'll be running it through the Krakoan gate, which will hide his sequencing in its biological encoding, which is impossible to crack. Reed knows they will find him though, but Maker thinks that they will, but it will take them years, decades even, wondering if Reed really wants to find him that badly. Doctor Strange and Professor X tell him it depends on what he's planning on doing, but Maker will only say that he's going someplace that he can call his own to create what he intended to all along. Reed knows exactly where he's going, panicking and telling the team to stop him now. The heroes blast the shield, but it does nothing thanks to the dilution shields he stole from Atlantis. The heroes watch as the Maker heads through the portal, telling them that he's often wondered if he and Reed's roles were reversed, would he be any different to Reed, and it's why he's waited and left a trail. Also, he could have this moment with Reed and ask him this one question. Would Reed, if he could really change things, would he erase Maker from existence? After a moment of thought, Reed says that he would, and the Maker will keep that in mind as he disappears through the portal, which deactivates before the heroes can follow. Some other time on Earth 6160, Liz Allen tells the arriving Peter Parker that he is late. Not surprised at all though. Peter knows that something, as always, came up as they head into the science building, knowing that Dr. Schwinner built a new device and they are going to be demoing it. Peter finds the new machine, knowing it could change the world as a scientist begins the tour, explaining it to be an isotope genome accelerator. As Peter and Liz look over it, a red and blue spider above them descends towards Peter. Peter thinks that this is one big dream, and Liz agrees since if he thinks he's going to be wowing the world with what he's done, he's dreaming since he's just an average guy with an average life. She knows that she could be wrong though as the spider drops onto Peter's hand. Suddenly the spider is killed by someone who assures Peter that he was just dealing with the arachnid before it bit him and wasn't actually hitting Peter. The man knows that the size of the spider is deceptive since who knows what it could have done if it had bit him, and maybe it would have done nothing or maybe it would have done everything, but the only way they'd even know that if they let the monster have its way with Peter. The man puts it in a specimen bag, telling Peter that he couldn't let that happen since with such power, even if it was just a small amount like he has, it comes with no small measure of responsibility. The man is revealed to be the Maker, who asks the boy who really wants to live in a world where men like him stand by and do nothing, since he knows he does not want to. Sometime later, Maker reminisces about the words Reed Richards said to him before he left Earth 616. Deciding since he knows how his enemy thinks of him, he's going to do whatever he wants now. He begins by researching Earth 6160, finding some differences to his own and the Earth 616, like Loki being the king of Asgard, which is also cut off from the other 10 realms. He immediately finds the Fantastic Four, letting them go on their mission to space but causes their mission to be delayed so they no longer are affected by the cosmic rays that give them their powers. Down on Earth, Maker sees that Howard Stark and Obadiah Stane have joined companies to make weapons and Bruce Banner is still infected by the gamma rays. Maker finds that there is surprisingly a lot missing, like no super soldier sealed in ice, meaning there is no paragon of a better time full of better men. So he decided to become that since there is no Captain America, and the world craves men like him. Maker seals off Latveria from the world, reliving time over and over again to make the perfect timeline, but then realizes that he can do much better. In New York City, the Iron Man streaks through the buildings, amazing the people of the city. Obadiah asks Tony if his father always does this, and Tony knows that his father never considers a test complete until he's waved at every lady in the city. Howard returns, telling his partner not to believe his son's words. Jarvis thinks that Howard is going a little too far this time, since the world has enough billionaires getting what they want and deserving none of that. Howard tells her that things could have been so much worse if the technocrats didn't win the war, asking his butler for his drink. Obadiah thinks it's a little bit early for vodka and orange juice, but Howard doesn't think it is in Latveria. Howard tells his friend that he doesn't want to have to do this, but Obi tells him that it's time for it and he needs to get out of the lab and show his face to the people, since there's a political aspect to this, since they technically run part of the world. Howard knows that he never needed the applause, only wanting results, and Obadiah understands that, but also wants Howard to understand that there is a need for people like them. Howard remembers that he did promise his friend that he would go to this, and besides, it wasn't really an invite, it was more of a request. He makes it known that he doesn't like the Maker, but Obadiah reminds him not to make trouble, since this is the wrong attitude to have with these people. Howard surprises Obadiah though by agreeing with the system that these people have put in place and how it works, but Obi becomes suspicious that Howard has plans of his own. Howard finds himself questioning everything they have done and if this is all they can do with their amazing gifts, and it keeps him up at night that he doesn't want to accept that. Howard is told the jet is ready and heads out to his ride, given his schedule while on the jet by Pepper as he asks what Obadiah's agenda is, but the man knows that it's just time for Howard to meet his Maker. In Latveria, the news of the world covers the big gathering of the world leaders, spotting Obadiah and Howard arriving, the Hulk, who has arrived with his peaceful monks, along with the Pacific clan led by the Sun Emperor and the Rasputin family. All the families and world leaders gather outside the castle as the Maker comes to greet them, although he knows something is about to happen, telling someone unseen that he is waiting. In the sky above the castle, a portal opens and dozens of Avengers fall through it, intending on killing the Maker and no one else. The Avengers attack and Howard asks Obadiah what they are to do since he didn't come armed, as per Obadiah's wishes. Obadiah wished he didn't listen to him this one time, revealing that he did come armed, calling in his War Machine armor and joining the battle. The Avengers continue to try and get to the Maker, but his guard's shields prove to be impossible to breach. Suddenly, a white vision phases his hand through Obadiah's chest, short-circuiting the arc reactor in it. Obadiah apologizes to Howard as the armor explodes, throwing Howard away and knocking him out as the fight rages on around him. Later on, the Maker awakens Howard, telling him that Obadiah is dead. He wishes there was time to grieve, but time is something they are a little short of right now. He shows the man the captured Avengers, telling him that they are from the future and were sent to erase both of them from history. Howard asks why, and Maker knows that's the question of the day, asking if it makes him fear what he is going to do in the future, and how that could have angered someone so much that they sent these beings back to kill him. Howard is still wrapping his head around the static temporal states and how everything they do in the past affects the future and vice versa. But Maker asks if he wants to find out if cause and effect is indeed real, ushering in a group of everyday people, revealing he did a regressive scan of each of the future soldiers and discovered all of them are genetic clones made from seed DNA. So he tracked down the source of the DNA to this group of everyday people. His men kill the people, and in an instant, the Avengers from the future all scream in pain and turn into a pink viscous goo. Howard is sickened at what the Maker has done, knowing that they will do the same to him and will kill him when he's a child. But the Maker reveals that that won't work since he wasn't born on this earth, and if they come for him, it has to be right now at the height of his power. Howard knows they did that, and his friend died because of it. Maker waves off the comment, leading Howard into a lab to show him the Immortus engine. Howard figures out pretty quickly that this is a time machine and is the reason why the costumed people came after him. Maker reveals that the machine is damaged and doesn't actually work, along with the idea that Howard's world was never always this perfectly ordered society he knows now, and it only became that because the Maker manipulated it with the engine, using it to erase threats before they could emerge and repurpose existing pieces, like Howard himself for grander designs. Howard comes to grips with what the Maker did, accusing him of annihilating the future and destroying the past. He asks if this is Maker's first encounter with him, but the villain reveals that this is their second, and the first was 2 weeks ago. He removes his helmet to reveal that half his head is missing, telling Howard their first meeting left quite an impression on him. Howard asks how the man is even alive, learning that the Maker chose to separate his brain and vital organs from his body long ago for self-preservation purposes, and while he can heal, it will take some time, and since then he has suffered some damage, since now his memory is impaired and he can't trust it to remember things correctly. He does know that he needs Howard more than anyone else on this world, since he believes that Howard Stark built the Immortus engine and he needs Howard to do it again. Later on at the funeral of Obadiah Stane, Howard and Tony Stark send their friend off to the afterlife. Later at the graveyard, Howard raises a drink to his fallen friend, hoping he will sleep well. Tony asks what he's going to do now, but Howard asks his son what he would think about running away from all of this to live a quiet, peaceful life. Tony would love nothing more than to do that with his father, but he knows that that's not happening. He asks his father what happened at the attack on Latveria, as 2 days prior, Howard finds himself in a meeting with other world leaders. He meets Emmanuel da Costa, who has been following his work for years, and it's unfortunate they have to meet under circumstances like this. Da Costa knows that Howard feels a little out of place, and the man knows he tried to introduce himself to Yoshida, but the Silver Samurai stopped him. Emmanuel knows that that's protocol, since no one speaks to the Sun Emperor while he has his mask on. Instead, they have to talk to his voice, the woman named Viper. Emmanuel knows though that it's better off waiting until Sun Emperor removes his mask and is free to talk. He warns him how the upper and lower kingdoms follow similar rules, and Ra only talks when the sun is setting and Khonshu only talks when there is a full moon. Henry Dugari comes by to meet Howard, who learns that the man carries the Sword of Might and the Amulet of Right, making him the rightful ruler of the EU. Hulk comes by, asking if they know what this meeting is about, but none of the men seem to know what it is. Hulk regrets the events that led to Howard being part of these meetings, suspecting the attack was trying to destabilize what they have built there, and while he hates violence, if it turns out to be true, he will become quite angry. Illyana storms into the room, demanding to know who attacked them and where the Maker is. Howard is surprised that they all round up in the meeting with the Rasputins, since they are the enemy. Emmanuel doesn't think that Obadiah explained how this all works, and gives Howard pause, making him think that he probably should have listened to his friend. Hulk reveals that in this room there are no such things as enemies, but Howard reminds him that the Eastern conflict happened and there's events in the Pacific and the Winter Apocalypse that happened as well. Hulk knows that's the world Howard knows, and if he looks around he'll see several major territories are represented there, and at one time or another, each was playing the quote-unquote bad guy, and this time it's just the Rasputins. Hulk explains how one territory will take over from the next and the cycle continues, and it's all to focus the citizens' eyes on external threats and away from internal failures. Also, the illusion of peace can be kept. He knows that the Maker believes that this is good because it works, and it does indeed work for the greater good. Howard struggles with his entire worldview being broken, finding it to be the most insidious thing he's ever heard. Emmanuel doesn't think he won't like what comes next, and for good reason. Emmanuel reveals that the Maker studied the problem through several experimental societies inside his city, and he learned that peace isn't successful long term, since humanity is incapable of accepting it. Hulk assures him though that not all of them agree with Maker's assumptions, since he believes that people can achieve a state of inner calm, and he has devoted his life to it. However, he knows most can't keep it going for long, or handle the quiet and inaction. He does wish it wasn't true, as the Maker arrives, telling them that it is indeed true and always has been. Maker thinks that focusing on the shortcomings of the human nature makes it easier for them to gloss over why they did this, which is that the little people hate that they are giants who rule the land, and it's not how it used to be, and people hate change, which is why it is necessary and a good thing to do. Howard now believes that finding this insidious was being far too kind, but the Maker doesn't care, since it doesn't change who they are and who Howard is, which is one of the rich, powerful elite. One of them. Howard does have one question though, since if this is all to keep the people happy so they can get on with the important work, then what is that important work? Maker thinks he's finally getting somewhere, as in the present, Howard and Tony take the chopper to Stark Stane Tower, with Howard again turning to drink to cope with what he knows. Tony asks his father what they're going to do about all of this stuff with the Maker, but Howard doesn't have any idea, asking his son if he's got any bright ideas. Tony thinks they should fight them, but Howard knows that will just prove Maker's point, and they also might lose. Tony tells him that there is right and wrong, and this is all wrong, but Howard knows his son is mistaking right and wrong for good and evil. Tony asks if Obadiah really knew about this, but Howard is unsure, liking to pretend that his friend didn't know, and he was always the guy that he knew and grew up with, but he will never get the answer to that question. Tony still believes that they should fight and they should win, as the Starks arrive at the tower and Howard reveals that he has some ideas, so Tony has to give him a couple of weeks before he can really start being disappointed in his old man. Tony wants to come and help him, but Howard says the whole point of him fighting is so that his son can outlive them all, but if he needs him, he'll call. Before Howard heads off in his jet, Tony warns him to be careful, and Howard knows that careful doesn't come with winning, heading off in the Stark jet. The day before, Howard is taken through the Maker's lab in the city, told that this is the place where some true genius work is done. Maker tells him that this will be his lab and he'll build the Immortus machine there, and he wants Howard to meet his lab partner. Howard knows he works better alone, but Maker introduces him to this world's Reed Richards, knowing that some call him the smartest man in the world, and Maker agrees with that. Howard finds Reed wears a metal mask and doesn't talk all that much, as in the far future, more Avengers clones are created and rallied by Captain America, who says that 4,000 years of careful genetic engineering was all for nothing, but they didn't yield. Thor says that they now have 6,000 years of better clone stock and their armies have been remade, so how much longer must they wait for an attack? Their leader silences them with a wave of his hand, showing them images of Latveria and how the Maker hides away, and he is an ageless immortal while the Maker is a creature of a temporal vault, hiding away. He asks his men what they say to pretenders like him, and the Avengers know they say that their time has come. The leader is revealed to be Kang the Conqueror, who says that their time to fight is now. Back in the Maker's city, Reed Richards tells Howard Stark that he knows the Maker's secrets, as the duo build the new Immortus engine. Howard hopes that his secrets will help him build the device as he begins putting the final touches on it, hoping it will hold together. Howard asks about the secrets and Reed says that it's the sins of the Maker, knowing where the being comes from and how he made their world, having seen it with his own eyes, but until now, he had no one to share it with. He asks if the inventor wants to see, and Howard does, but he wants to finish the engine first since it'll give them all the time in the world. Howard finishes up work on the coil structure and Reed looks over his work, finding it quite elegant, but he might want to consider a feedback mechanism, especially if the device is going to be built to go both forward and backward through time. Howard can't believe he missed that, since without one, it could cause the literal temporal branching of a human who uses the device, and who knows what that would do. Reed knows that someone will always know, tactfully warning Howard that the Maker is always watching them. Howard figures that he's just tired, asking Reed how long they've been working since it feels like days, but he can't exactly remember. Reed says that they are in a temple of abstract time and he gave up marking days and time long ago. Howard asks how long he's been imprisoned there, so Reed points out, detailing how he first thought it was just sunlight creeping across the room to show a passing of time, so he began to mark its progress and study it. Reed came to the conclusion that it was months going by, but at the same time the light would also ever so slightly speed up or slow down. When he knew he had the right calculations, he said them aloud so the Maker could hear them, only hearing the villain laughing beyond the walls as the light moved up and down the wall, signaling to him that it was artificial and being bounced off a mirror somewhere and controlled by the Maker himself. Reed knows that it was just the first game Maker played with him, and Howard believes his mask was another, but he reveals that the Maker has been pretty open about what the mask represents, and it's not a game at all, since it's who he really is. Reed motions to the lab, citing out that this is all real and he can seemingly come and go as he pleases, but really he cannot escape, and Maker tortures and hates him. However, he does not know why. Howard wants to help him escape, but Reed knows that they cannot run from who they are. 1 week later, Reed and Howard get ready to present the new Immortus engine to the Maker. Reed assures the armored up Howard his hologram suit is functional, but his psyche is below tolerable thresholds. Howard feels the same but knows that they will do this and see each other on the other side. Howard goes to see the Maker, presenting him with a new engine core he created for the Immortus engine, as Reed takes a letter for Tony and his own device, cloaking himself as one of Maker's guards so he can escape to the city's control center. Maker looks over the device, knowing that this is a way to make the world into the wonder he knows it is. Tony knows that it's not, since he simply copied the original engine, which he knows was made by someone else's hands, the makers if he was to presume. Maker wonders if this might be a copy of a copy then, and that's the way of things, but all Howard hears is more reason for him to destroy the device. Maker doesn't want him to be so rash, since they have a monster from the future they need to kill. Reed meanwhile makes it to the mainframe, linking his power conduit terminator to the city's core as Howard calls Maker a monster, and he's tired of choosing between which monster to serve and which one is more acceptable to follow. Reed activates the device and it interrupts the city's mainframe, dropping the temporal shield that covers the city, and in turn allows Kang and his Avengers army from the future into the city before locking them all in together. Kang and his army attack as Maker sends his Children of Tomorrow out to defend the city. Maker can see that Howard is now playing his own game, but he won't be stopped since he is just getting started, while Howard is an ignorant, ungrateful child who has rejected his environment. He knows that these future people are there to erase all his mighty works, including Howard, and he can run and hide, however he cannot fight inevitability. Howard leaves Maker and fights off both his forces and the future Avengers, knowing that he has a third choice to make and he's going to take that over the Makers or Kangs. Enraged, Maker tells the Avengers that he understands why they are doing this, but they need to know that they are merely delaying what has to happen. He demands the obstructions stop and Kang be brought before him as Kang spots the villain on the battlefield, killing a group of Maker's men to free himself to confront the villain head on, telling him that he has waited 2 lifetimes for this moment. Howard tries to make it through the battle, but various Avengers corner him and throw him down through the city. The power conduit terminator Reed's setup begins counting down from 60 seconds as Howard is knocked to the ground. Kang meanwhile blows off the Maker's helmet, causing the villain to realize that the pain is something that clarifies things, and now he remembers the Conqueror. In the far future, the Maker, having time traveled with the Immortus engine, meets Kang for the first time. Maker tells the being that he came as far as he could into the future to see what his world would be like, demanding the armored being tell him who he is and where he is. Kang knows that he was always going to come there and he's been waiting for him. Maker asks why, thinking that it was for something to do with revenge or maybe even reverence, but Kang blows off part of Maker's head, telling him that he is his Maker and he is about to witness his origin. Back in the present, Maker remembers this encounter, knowing who the man is as Howard, now equipped with his own Immortus engine, arrives, wanting to put an end to it all. Kang knows that the hero is solving 2 problems at once, citing how righteous the Iron Man is, since it's like looking at some hazy remembrance at what was. Howard knows, however, it's like looking in a mirror and hating what you see, unleashing the power of the Immortus engine on everyone in the city. In the Maker's castle outside the city, Reed steals the original Immortus engine, having promised to do so, but wonders why he hesitates so, thinking that this could be another prison for him, one whose walls are made from obligation this time, not punishment. He decides to leave the choice to better angels, packing up the engine as in the city, the Terminator continues to tick down as Howard ejects from his broken armor, finding Maker and Kang are both defeated. He removes the faceplate of Kang's armor, overcome with grief as who he sees under the mask as the Terminator goes off, sealing the city up in a temporal shield again. 1 week later, the world leaders meet, finding they don't exactly know what happened at the city. They do know that this exact thing has happened before, but never for this long. Ra reveals that no one knows what Maker was doing in there when he originally appeared, but the story is that the first time he sealed the city, it was for a month, and inside the walls of it, 1,000 years passed in that time. So this is rather foreboding. Khonshu knows that 24 months is a cause for dread, as Hulk remembers asking Maker if time dilation was constant in the dome. So if 1 month equaled 1,000 years, would 3 months equal 3,000 years? He never got a full answer though, since the Maker would just smile at him and tell him that some secrets will stay with him. Eduardo da Costa knows that this means they have 2 years until the dome reopens, and talk immediately turns to what they'll do in that time, be it keep the peace or tear the world apart. Henry votes to just party, since there's no guarantee that what comes out of that city will even be recognizable or friendly. Eduardo knows that it's the subject for debate, but they need to focus on what about America and their union, since they now have no leader currently, as Stain is dead and Stark is trapped in the city. The group consider appointing a new one, or maybe even carving up the territory between them. The group despite knowing what they will actually do, still put it to a vote, as at Stark Tower, Tony is met by Reed, who gives him his father's letter, as well as the Immortus engine. Reed knows that bringing them these things was the most important part of their plan. He has ideas on how the device can be used by Tony, but Howard knew how Tony would use them, and the choice will be his alone. Tony wants to know if his father is dead, but Reed doesn't have a definitive answer. The frustrated Tony decides that he's going to need a suit then, getting to work on building his own, which integrates the Immortus engine into it, citing how it will be able to handle the temporal shear and will need navigational controls. Reed suggests that it should be used as a weapon as well, and Tony agrees wholeheartedly. After a while, Tony finishes his suit, wanting to get to work on some things that Maker couldn't find in his exploration of the world, and he thinks he knows why. Reed asks what he will call himself, thinking Tony will use his father's moniker of Iron Man. Tony, however, knows that he'll go under the name Iron Lad, at least until he has found a better name. Iron Lad and Reed head out into the past, and Tony reads his father's letter, which states that he was so tired of the world and the people in it. Howard is aware that the fault was his alone, and maybe more so since he had his gifts. He finds himself upset with himself since he didn't care enough to notice what was really going on in the world that he was helping to shape. Tony and Reed venture into the frozen north and head into a hidden cavern, searching the icy walls for something, as Howard's letter details how his life and work are both tainted with evil. All except for Tony, who is innocent in all of this, but the world is not for the innocent. He tells his son that through innocent eyes that the world can be seen for what it truly can be, and he needs to remember it's never too late to change the world. Reed and Tony soon reach their destination, discovering the frozen body of Captain America, as Howard tells his son to fight on and to win. Sometime later, Doctor Doom and Iron Lad make their way through Asgard's prison, hoping that the map they swiped on arrival will lead them to their target. Tony warns Reed that the sun is coming up and they are running out of time, so he better get the man out quick. Doom calls to the man inside the cell, who tells him to go away since he doesn't want food or conversation, since no one should listen to him as he's been branded a traitor. Doom hopes the man is happy to know that he is something of a lawbreaker himself, fixing a device to the door that opens a portal. He tells the man that he plans on freeing him and proving his innocence, and the man hopes that Doom isn't lying to him since he has no patience for liars. The portal opens and Doom promises to free the man, but only if he is the god of thunder and lightning. Thor, Odin's son, confirms he is, joining Doom and Iron Lad, but he doesn't want to leave just yet since he has a great need, and if that is met, then they won't need to worry about any sort of ship the heroes have used to get there. Iron Lad wonders if Thor realizes that the ship he made is an experimental prototype that can navigate both real and imaginary space, but Doom knows that he doesn't, but Thor seems certain on what he needs to do. Tony wonders what is better than $1 billion ship as Thor goes to retrieve Mjolnir, confronting Lady Sif in the process. Sif warns Thor that this isn't what they agreed to, and it seems that he wishes to get the stick and the correction that comes with it. Thor demands that he be given what is rightfully his, and he will go about his way and it won't be any of Asgard's concern. Sif reminds him that he is a royal prisoner, and if they escape, she will be the one who gets the blame, so he best return to his cell. Thor refuses and Sif and her men get ready for a fight, but Iron Lad blasts one of the guards in the face, telling him they don't have time for this. Thor refuses to leave without his hammer, but Sif taunts him, telling him to come and take it. Thor knows he doesn't have to, summoning the hammer to him and powering it up. Doom finds it rather an impressive weapon, even more so than Tony's ship. Tony asks if Thor could always summon the hammer, so why didn't he while he was in his cell? Doom theorizes that he just didn't want to, as Thor smashes his way through Sif's men, unleashing his lightning on the woman and ending the fight real quick. Iron Lad asks how they are going to escape now, since they will have to fight their way to the ship. Thor has other ideas, telling his new friends to stand close to him as he summons the Bifrost. Lady Sif dives into the Bifrost portal behind the heroes, following them back to Stark Tower. At the tower, Thor finds the frozen Captain America, told by Doom that in many ways he is as the same as both of them, a hero from an erased age. But unlike all of them who have been corrupted, they rescued Steve Rogers at his origin, where he was the most innocent. Thor intends to smash the man free from the ice block, but Tony warns him not to, since getting Cap out is a complicated process, and they have no safety net in place for anything they do now, so they need to be very very careful. Doom wants to replace Cap's blood with a Pichio-tech to speed up the unfreezing process, but the files he stole from Maker indicate that super soldier serum is in his blood, so if they replace his blood, he will no longer have his powers. Reed still wants to go ahead with it, but knows that Tony does not like risk. Thor asks if he can hear them, but Tony is unsure, since Steve couldn't regain consciousness until a little further along in the process, so he probably is still in a deep coma. Despite not knowing if Cap can hear him, Thor tells him that he would free him if the risks were not so high. However, he promises his new friend that when the choice must be made to free him, he will be freed, since it's better to die free than trapped in a frozen hell. Lady Sif, who has been watching the entire scene unfold, finds Thor's words are strong, especially for someone who was also imprisoned. Thor reminds her that he isn't on Asgard in a cell anymore, but Sif warns him that that's just temporary, and just because he has her leave does not mean he has her absolution, no matter what these humans say to her. Tony tells her that the point of what they are doing is that everything they think is real is just a lie, and the world isn't as it should be, and Thor and Sif can help fix it. Sif doesn't really want to, but Tony tells her that Thor isn't supposed to be some prisoner, he's meant to be her king. Sif laughs that off, since royal blood does not guarantee a royal crown. Thor is surprised to learn that he was meant to be king, so Tony asks Doom to tell him what he told him. Doom explains everything about the Maker, the ruler of Earth, and how he trapped him in a future city so they could change the world back to how it was meant to be within 2 years before Maker gets out. Doom reveals that Maker is from another Earth, and he arrived on this Earth with one mission: erase the world's heroes from existence, and he was able to do that by changing the circumstances that would transform a myriad of them into who they were meant to be, with the knowledge he had from another Earth's history. Sif demands to know how Doom knows this, revealing Reed was once Maker's prisoner and he was able to steal his files. Tony says that Thor was meant to be king, but Maker and Loki killed Odin and stole his birthright, ruining his future, but now they want to set things right. Thor finds great comfort in the idea that the pain he has nursed for years wasn't a sickness or a flaw in himself, but a righteous anger. He agrees to help the heroes, and Sif agrees to stick around for the ride, and with the team assembled, Doom sets their next mission, explaining that he stole the most updated files Maker had before sealing the city, and now he understands the reference numbers that were next to each entry he had, finding that they were storage codes for a repository where Maker would keep trinkets and keys or catalysts to each hero he wronged. Doom shows them a map of Latveria and the repository's location within the Citadel. Sif notes that the Citadel is well fortified and they won't be able to just walk in, but Tony coyly wishes they had someone who could magically teleport them into the Citadel. Later on, Thor teleports the team into the Citadel, finding the repository. As Iron Lad tries to enter the door, he is stopped by a force shield. Doom gets to work on disabling it, knowing the Maker was consistent in his inconsistency. However, he finds there is no passcodes for the doorway or even any override, so there is no getting in quietly. Thor reminds him that he's the god of thunder and he's never really concerned himself with being quiet. With no other choice, Thor blasts the door with his lightning, gaining them entry into the repository. No alarms sound out, however, but Doom knows that their mission still needs to continue regardless. But upon entering the repository, they find it's more than just one repository, but dozens of canisters. Sif asks if each of these contains relics from a stolen life, but Doom reveals each hold the relics of 100 stolen lives, meaning there is thousands of repositories there. Iron Lad doesn't want to leave them all, thinking that maybe they could gather the pods together and teleport them away with the Bifrost, but Sif says that even Mjolnir has her limits on what it can move. Tony asks if Thor could do it though, and the god tells him that it's an evil thing to chain men to fates not their own, but he is a god not bound by the limits of men, so he can absolutely do it. Suddenly, Thor is stabbed in the back by Henry Dugari, who warns them that there are consequences for crime in the capital city. Sif attacks, but the man bats her away like she is nothing, telling the heroes that Captain Britain is going to be their judge. Iron Lad blocks Henry's sword, telling Captain Britain that he is going to end what he and the other secret rulers of the world have done. Henry doesn't take the boy's threats seriously, ripping off his face mask and recognizing him as Howard Stark's son. Tony wants him to remember his face, slamming his palm against Henry's eye and blowing it out with his repulsors, blinding the man. Tony asks the injured Thor if he can get them out of there, quickly teleporting the heroes back to Stark Tower. Once back at the tower, Tony gets the medical protocols ready, having never had to use them and doesn't even know if they will work properly on someone like Thor, as Sif nurses the god of thunder, knowing that he cannot die on her watch. As Thor undergoes a medical procedure, Doom looks over the one repository they managed to take, finding it to be a cryogenic device filled with many catalysts, including a spider. He knows now they have many options at their fingertips, as the now one-eyed Captain Britain meets with the other rulers of Earth, telling them that Stark's son did this and how he made off with the Maker's lure. Hulk regrets that Henry lost an eye, but they have all wondered what to do with America in the power vacuum that Howard's disappearance created, and now he sees a path forward as Tony has given them North America. The rulers activate their orbital laser and Tony gets a targeting alert, bringing up a visual of the laser, as the Hulk says that they will take America by committing the acts of a terrorist. Tony's armor activates as Doom tells him options are limited with Thor down and maybe there is only one choice. Tony understands as his quantum field activates just in time as the laser hits New York, obliterating Stark Tower and a lot of the city. Henry and the others wonder how they'll sell this destruction, and Hulk knows that they will do what they always do, tell lies so large that it's inconceivable they were fabricated to begin with, and to cover all of that up, they will put Stark's name on it. Henry questions if they will believe it when they say that Tony Stark did this, but Hulk knows they will since the weapon they used on New York was made by his father. 1 week later, the news continues its reporting on the tragic destruction of New York, finding that they have questions as thousands still remain missing, and thanks to international aid, a database of missing people has been made. The reporter brings up a chyron of the names, which include Norman and Emily Osborn and May Parker, indicating that these people were close to Stark Tower when the explosion happened. He hopes that anyone who can confirm or deny the names come forward immediately before turning to international news, where an insurgence has been reported in the strongholds of the Upper and Lower Kingdoms. The reporter returns to the incident in New York, asking viewers why the teenage Tony Stark would do something like this, theorizing it was because his father and godfather Obadiah Stane both passed so close together, driving him insane. He closes out the report, thinking that they may never know since Tony is thought to have died in the attack. However, Tony, from an unknown location, watches the report with disdain growing behind his eyes.